welcome to Cambridge Coffee Corner. This is the first of our podcasts where we share our opinions, rants, thoughts and raves about retail technology. I'm joined this morning by Ken Belanger, Vice President of Cambridge Retail Advisors. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
And by Sarah Pelton, Partner at Cambridge Retail Advisors. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Duncan.
And last but by no means least, by Eric Moody, VP of Marketing for Cambridge Retail Advisors. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So, I'm Duncan Taylor. I'm a functional consultant for Cambridge Retail Advisors and host of this morning's show. And we're sipping coffee and trying not to choke on it as we talk about tariffs and how they've landed so far. These are just our opinions based upon what we've seen. We're not discussing the politics of it, but we are reflecting on where the use of tariffs have affected buying habits. And thanks to this virtual meeting format, we're well represented. I'm speaking to you from Montreal, Canada. Ken and Sarah are joining us in from the Massachusetts area. And Eric is down in deepest southwestern Florida. So I think we'll have a good range of reflections from different parts of North America. Okay, let's get stuck straight in. Ken, we're going to go to you first. Have you seen any of the consumer effects on tariffs landing in your part of the world?
Absolutely. When we talk about the impact on tariffs from the consumer perspective, tariffs seem to be showing up in places that we didn't necessarily expect. And those places might be in our closet, in our garage, or at the grocery store. So I think we're all mindful of understanding where we are in this tariff time frame. Some things haven't affected yet. Other things, you have to be more aware of where that brand was made, the parts that are inside that washer or lawnmower, and then ultimately where that product was sourced from. So you got to be more mindful of where the product came from.
Okay. Thanks, Ken. What about you, Sarah? You're not too far away from Ken. Have you seen any consumer effects of the tariffs so far?
We have. We're not seeing major sticker shock yet, but the effects are already in motion. Retailers are starting to shift pricing strategies, either by pulling back on promotions or quietly raising prices on select items. That's creating a ripple effect in consumer behavior, and shoppers are becoming a lot more mindful and cautious, especially with their bigger ticket purchases. I mean, I think it's fair to say consumer confidence is a little shaky right now. And if prices do go up across key categories, brand loyalty could be tested. People may trade down, delay purchases, or seek alternatives. But I think the bottom line is that while tariffs haven't fully hit the shelves yet, the anticipation alone is already shaping how and what consumers are purchasing.
Yeah. I heard mindful from you and from Ken already, so I'm going to say that we as humans are irrational. However, trends or whatever you want to call this tends to make us a little more rational, and we hold back until we kind of know what's going to happen, and it's really difficult to pick through about what's going to happen. So I go back real quickly to Psychology 101 class, learned helplessness, and that's sort of where we are until there's clarification and communication really from the retailers about what to expect. It's hard for the shoppers to figure out what to do next.
Interesting. Well, from a Canadian perspective, we've seen quite a marked effect, not necessarily on the actual tariffs themselves, but really as a reaction to the imposing of the tariffs, particularly on Canada. Canada was one of the first targets. And it's actually created some, I'll say, anti-American sentiment when it comes to goods. So both the Quebec and the Ontario liquor boards, they're government controlled, and pretty quickly they took American produce from the shelves. The SAQ in Quebec deals with most of the wine coming in, as well as liquor, and it was a straight up exit of American liquor and wine. That really wasn't an imposition, because the consumer sentiment is actually bringing Canada together in quite a nationalistic way. There was a quote made across the board that you've upset Quebecers when Quebecers are feeling proudly Canadian. So we've seen that, and it's a very pro-Canadian thing that's happened. So we're looking for local Canadian produce and things.
I'm not drinking any more Molson. Well, maybe just a little.
Maybe just even as basic as cauliflower. There's cauliflower being left on market shelves because most of the cauliflower comes from the US. Consumers are looking for other vegetables. So I hope it's a softening sometime soon. I hope we can get through that. I think it's going to need to be tariff-led, or the removal of it, that will make it happen. But at least for now, it's especially with the Canadian general election coming up, that's been amplified by the sound bites coming from all of the parties about Canada First. So perhaps the general election is amplifying that, and we'll see what the effect is in the medium term. But in the short term, it's a lot more pointing at goods from other sources, and that would affect travel as well. The US is always the default for travel for Canadians, particularly in the winter, and they're actively looking at other ways to spend their travel dollars right now. Okay, so let's turn to the retailers. What's been the impression on retailer strategies as a result of the tariffs? Maybe I'll go to you first this time, Sarah. What have you seen from a retailer perspective? Are you seeing a knock-on effect of the retailers and their priority of projects and spending?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely been a shift, and it's happening on multiple fronts. Retailers are getting a lot more strategic about their assortments. They're analyzing their SKUs by margin and sales velocity to decide which products can carry a price increase, which ones need to stay put, and which ones may need to be quietly phased out and off the shelves. On the other side, we're also seeing a very active conversation between retailers and manufacturers. Many retailers are going back to the table and asking suppliers to share in the tariff burden, especially for high volume and long-standing relationships with manufacturers. On the flip side, manufacturers who are already underperforming or are inflexible on their pricing are being reconsidered, and in some cases, they're just getting cut from the lineup altogether. At the assortment level, some retailers are shifting towards private label or non-tariff impacted alternatives, if there are any, to preserve their margins. Others are adjusting their bundle strategies or promotional tactics to reposition value without any visible price hikes to consumers. So, as we talked about before, even though you're not seeing on the shelf dramatically different prices yet, there's a lot happening behind the scenes that retailers are trying to solution to protect the bottom line and avoid sticker shocking the consumer.
Interesting, Sarah. Any thoughts from Ken or Eric on that one?
From my perspective, the retailers are going through situational planning. What they deem as situational planning is what happens if the tariffs increase from 10%, 20% to 50%. What does my demand look like for X products? And what happens if the tariff doesn't necessarily get that high? I need to have enough inventory to know that I've got enough to kind of buffer for the next few months, but I don't want to buy too much if the tariff now becomes 100%. My demand will not necessarily match what historically my replenishment system says that I really need. So lots of variables, and it changes on a daily, weekly basis.
Any final thoughts for you on that, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, both of you were just talking about a lot of really interesting things that are going on behind the scenes with retailers and have to go on behind the scenes for them to be successful here. And then Meanwhile, they also have to just look at it from their customer's point of view and communicate as clearly as they can with what they know, so that the expectations are hopefully managed, or at least semi-managed, so that the shoppers are pretty much going by what they see on the news and what they see online in various channels, and they're looking at the price tags and deciding if they should purchase based on, oh, I'm being told there's a pre-tariff sale. Do I act on that, or do I wait and see if the tariff game changes? And so it's really difficult for the consumers, and the retailers are empathetic for many reasons, and communicating as clearly as they can about what's going on with them as a brand.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very early relatively. I think from a retailer perspective, they will be either relying upon inventory that's already landed, and maybe going through some of that as they start to rely upon the imports coming in for the next phase of their year or their planning or something like that. We'll see bigger effects in next seasons if the retailer is seasonally affected. Even as big as car manufacturing, I mean, GM are putting a pause on production because it's clear that they're relying upon parts coming in from a broad range of countries. And if the tariff changes tomorrow, that could have a marked effect up or down on the cost of parts that they get. So as one big example of assembly relying upon parts coming in from multiple places, it's tough to tell, and I think we'll be coming back and talking about this again.
I think that's a good point, though, Duncan. I think what consumers are starting to become aware of is that made in America does not mean that everything is made in America, right? Parts come from overseas. And even if you buy oranges from Florida, the bag that they're placed in probably came from China or Thailand or somewhere else, right? So there's probably going to be a significant increase or shift in pricing, even on American made or assembled goods. And I think consumers are just starting to gain visibility into that.
Yeah, that's great.
And Doug, I also see that, if you're a specialty fashion retailer, you're more astute to, the brand, where it's made. You may have reshored it 6 months or a year ago thinking you were safe. So I've never looked at labels of where the product was actually manufactured. Now I do. I went into American Eagle. I looked at the brand. I then said, okay, is that made in Thailand? Is it China? Is it India? So I'll know what the impact will be of that price potentially in the next 6 to 12 weeks.
Hey, we could be talking about this for the next hour, but unfortunately, that's all our time for today. So thanks for joining Ken, Sarah, and Eric for Cambridge Coffee Corner. This is just the start of the series. So if you have any thoughts of a future topic we can talk about, or if you'd like to be a panelist, please get in touch. We'd love to have you along. Grab your favorite coffee mug and join us for Cambridge Coffee Corner. This is Duncan signing off. Have a good day.
Cheers.